With that, welcome everyone to today's seminar. We're super excited to have this here. It's kind of our first one that discusses artificial intelligence in gaming. So I'm going to turn it over to Megan Cromwell, who is the Assistant Chief Data Officer in the NOAA National Ocean Service, to introduce our speaker and the topic today.
Thank you so much. Dr. Kakani Katija is the principal engineer at the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute and has a PhD in bioengineering from the California Institute of Technology. I've been lucky enough to work with Kakani over the last few years, and I'm glad we have the opportunity for her to share some of her work here with you guys. As the lead of the Bioinspiration Lab, Kakani and her group investigate ways that imaging and broad community engagement can enable observations of life in the ocean. By developing novel imaging and illumination tools, automating the classification of underwater visual data using artificial intelligence, building large-scale community science contributions through mobile gaming, and integrating algorithms on vehicles for robotic vehicle missions to consistently and persistently observe ocean life, their efforts will increase access to biology and related phenomena in the deep sea. And with that, you can take it away.
Great. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you all one of the recent projects that we launched, and also tell you a little bit about how all of these things are going to come together and help us observe life in the ocean a little bit better. And so with that, I'm going to turn off my camera and share my screen. And then there's the slides. So first, what I'm going to be talking about today is FathomVerse, explore the depths. And I am just one member of the team. We're very, very fortunate to have a lot of collaborators and supporting institutions that have been a part of this particular project that we rolled out very recently. But I also need to be very clear that besides our collaborators and partners, I'm very fortunate to be able to work with a lot of talented individuals that are part of the Bioinspiration Lab. And these are individuals ranging from software engineers to, computer scientists, as well as to, visual taxonomists and marine biologists. So the stuff I'm about to share with you today is been a huge effort involving Kevin Barnard, Lily Carlson, Emily Clark, Izzy Corby, and Yost Daniels, as well as Brian Schlinning. So heavily involved in software development and the engagement around the game. I also need to point out that this particular project has been funded by a number of different groups. More recently, National Science Foundation, the Dalio Philanthropies, and as well as Schmidt Ocean Institute. And over the years, we've been very fortunate to get other funding support for our activities in the lab. And so with that, I like these seminars nowadays, and I think every seminar should have like a photo of the speaker in their awkward early years. And of course, I've included one here. And I like to use this image as an example of, how much of a nerd I was very young and how that really hasn't changed over time. And so this is a photo from my 10th birthday party. And it's pretty clear who I am in this photo. I'm not actually the one holding the Barbie. I'm very, very excited about that spirograph right there. And if you remember the spirograph, I know it's come back more recently, right? This is the game that has all of these parts that look like gears and use, different kind of writing utensils or coloring to create these beautiful kind of geometric shapes. And I just loved this. And so I took this I had this like nerdy focus or approach to just about everything in life. And as I started to go to college and trying to make decisions around what I wanted to do with my life, I had enrolled in the aerospace engineering department for my undergraduate degree. And really, this is because I was inspired by, what our NASA astronauts have been able to do and able to accomplish. And so I was making a lot of decisions early on in my career that I thought would get me to become an astronaut. And so this is a photo of me. I don't think I've aged a day. And this is a photo of me as part of the reduced gravity Flight Opportunities Program, also known lovingly as the Vomit Comet program that NASA runs. And so, for me, I had made all these decisions because I thought, oh, if I'm in aerospace engineering, it'll be really straightforward for me to transition into, becoming an astronaut one day. What I soon found myself dealing with, and I kind of went through this transition in graduate school, was, there's limited opportunities to be doing a lot of exploration in space. And so, what I instead found myself doing, and this is a very short explanation of my transition, is that, instead of looking for life in outer planets, which is something that I thought, astronauts were involved in doing, instead I transitioned and started looking for life closer to home. And so, what this video shows you isn't a star field, right? This is what the ocean looks like at 300 meters deep in Monterey Bay. And then this particular video is a video of an autonomous underwater vehicle very close to the surface in Monterey Bay, moving through this smack of jellyfish. And so, really, what I'm driven to do and what I've been really focused on in my career more recently is trying to understand these biological systems. How do they work? How do they function? And there's a lot of reasons for why one might want to do that. But I also want to say that, these interests are also in this, realization that we have a lot of observational gaps in the ocean. And so this is a paper by Aaron Satterthwaite and a number of other authors where they pull data from these big data aggregation databases like OBIS and GBIF. And what they were doing was they were looking at or looking for instances where and locations where we might have repeatable or repeated biological observations. And so the colors indicate those particular locations based on the data that they were able to find in either these databases or other ongoing surveys. And the conclusion from this paper is that about 7% of the ocean surface area is covered by long-term biological observations. And I don't need to tell this audience this, but right, the ocean is a giant volume and comprises about 97% of the habitable living space on our planet. And so, it's clear that these are obvious gaps. I also wanted to add that from the species discovery perspective, it's estimated that anywhere from 30 to 60% of life in the ocean is undescribed. And so we have gaps. We have gaps in where we've done our observations, gaps or capacity, lack of capacity to do observations repeatedly, which is required for monitoring. And we also have gaps in really just knowing what's there and even naming them. So all of these things put together is something that, my group, the Bioinspiration Lab, is really, really focused on. So like how do we move that needle or fill in these observational gaps so that we can understand a life in the ocean, but also not just understand whether or not who's there and where they are over time, but also try to understand their function, right? Like how are they living in such diverse places? How are they surviving? And are these solutions something that we can look at and be inspired by to create new technologies? This is also known as bio-inspired design. And so the approach that we take in the Bioinspiration Lab is that if we address state-of-the-art instrumentation, if we utilize innovative observation platforms, or provide access to novel study systems, and this could be through data or through use of our infrastructure, if we could solve all three of these things, we can help the community understand these biological systems so that we can one day create technology inspired by them. And so some examples of how we've done this so far, and the Bioinspiration Lab actually started in 2017. We've got a number of examples of imaging systems that we've developed. DPIV, which is a laser illumination system that we've used to scan gelatinous and mucus structures in the ocean. There's IRIS, which is a planoptic imaging system that gives us volumetric data in real time. And then chitin
Hi,
is,
Kakani.
yeah.
I'm going to interrupt for 1 minute. I'm not seeing your presentation.
Oh, really?
Yep. So somehow we lost the slides.
Weird. I'll screen share again. That's weird. It did stop. And then you see them now?
Yes, we are seeing them now.
Great. Sorry about that. Hopefully that didn't happen for too long, but the three examples of imaging systems are DPIV Iris and Chiton. And Chiton is a new imaging system. It's a 7-camera payload that's integrated on autonomous underwater vehicles. And actually, NOAA's provided some funding for us to improve upon that system that we're going to be starting to deploy next year. We also have been involved in utilization, but also the development of innovative observation platforms. Here in MBARI, we're very fortunate to have access to a number of platforms like ROVs and AUVs. We were also involved in the development of the Mesobot. And then last but not least, access to novel study systems. And the way we've tried to do this is focus on data infrastructure and how do we get people access to really valuable data around, like that's used to identify and observe ocean life. And so these three activities, FathomNet, Ocean Vision AI, and FathomVerse, are things I'm going to talk a little bit about today. And so with that, I want to kind of dive in a little bit more because those three things, FathomNet, Ocean Vision AI, and FathomVerse, are really focused on kind of tackling this challenge that our community is facing when we're trying to do biological observations. And so, as an example, these are a number of different platforms that researchers are using with imaging, so like with camera systems that enable the observation of biological systems. And so, what you'll notice here, right, is that in some cases there's a single camera, some cases there's multiple cameras, but basically we're collecting a ton of visual data. And one of the challenges we have is processing all of it. So this is an example of what a benthic survey might look like, where in this case an ROV is collecting video, and what is required now is having a group of individuals with expertise who is able to not only identify every animal that you see in this footage, but also count them. And that information is really important because that tells us something about, animal abundance, animal relationships with each other, perhaps preference for different types of substrate. And right now, that is a very laborious process. It can take anywhere from 3 to 5 times as long to annotate footage compared to just collecting it. And so this is not a scalable approach, right? There's only so many places in the world that have the knowledge, never mind the capacity to process all of this. And so this is an open area of effort that we've really focused on, is like, how can we process this information or accelerate it so that we can make informed decisions about our activities in the ocean. So clearly we can't do this manually, and we've been looking more and more closely at whether artificial intelligence can be useful. And so the way this essentially works, if you have artificial intelligence or an algorithm in the loop, visual data will come into a pipeline, and then you have a combination of human verification, training of these artificial intelligence or these models, and then using that artificial intelligence to make predictions on what might be in that visual data. And for this to work really well, you need to have humans providing the verification. And this process repeats itself until you have accurate annotated data out. So I want to present this, and I want to make this important point, that if anyone says or tells you that, all you have to do is train a model once and you can run it on the data and it'll work perfectly forever, they are not telling you all of the truth. You have to absolutely have humans in the loop, particularly in the ocean environment, where we know it changes and can change drastically from day to day. And so, this is a challenge we have, is like, how do we not only create these data pipelines, but also insert humans in this loop and do so as effectively as possible, right? We want humans and AI to collaborate extremely well so that we can get annotated data out. And so what we've focused on as part of this Ocean Vision AI program is on the human AI interfaces. So like, what are the user interfaces that experts all the way to enthusiasts might be wanting to use to provide human verification into this whole data pipeline? And we conducted a lot of user interviews, and also learned through that process that there isn't a one size fits all solution to address this broad audience. And so instead, we'll break that up into smaller pieces. And what we've created over time, and this has been, I think, cumulatively almost 6 or 7 years of effort, is first FathomNet. And so FathomNet is particularly built for this expert audience. So this is experts in either marine science, experts in taxonomy, and very importantly, experts in computer science or machine learning. And so these are people who are looking for data and problems that they can apply their algorithms to, and we're trying to lower the barrier for that community to engage with ocean-related problems. And so what FathomNet is a global image and machine learning model repository where we can upload and host visual data as well as machine learning models. It's a publicly available data set and really serves as a mechanism for us to aggregate taxonomic expertise. Right? There's only a lot of us might only specialize in jellyfish or in corals, but being able to add that information or that expertise onto imagery, right, which captures all of those things at once, is really, really important and valuable. And I did want to highlight that, we've entered into an agreement with NOAA's National Centers for Environmental Information, thanks to the help with Megan and OER, to host submitted data to FathomNet from contributors all over the world. And so that pipeline is currently being put in place, and fingers crossed, that'll be ready to go this October. The other thing that we've been able to do is host a data competition as part of a FathomNet Kaggle competition on novel category discovery. And this has been a part of the computer vision and pattern recognition fine-grained visual categorization workshop now for the last 2 years. And so again, building FathomNet to not only engage the expert marine science and taxonomy audience, but also the expert computer vision and machine learning audience as well. So feel free to use that QR code if you want to go to that website. The next platform or approach that we're taking is creating a portal. And what this portal allows for is providing access to machine learning data pipelines, where, if you have visual data that you collect, for your research or for your work, you can upload and host your visual data on this platform. You can create public and private repositories depending on your needs for your particular project. And the idea here is that we make it very, very easy for you to interact with machine learning models, either selecting them, training them, or deploying them. And what's really, really important, right, is we're trying to integrate this very seamlessly with other existing occurrence databases like OBIS and GBIF, right? The goal is to get the data out so that they can be used by, either stakeholders or decision makers as soon as possible. And I'm really excited to say that we are on track for a launch of the portal. It hasn't been live yet in September. So if that's something really interesting to you or your particular project or program, I'd be very happy to talk about that. But last and not least, and actually the focus of the rest of my talk, an interface that we're creating to engage enthusiasts. Now, these are, people who might have taken a marine bio course in undergrad, or, people who love going to aquariums and zoos. And that is where FathomVerse lies. And so FathomVerse is a mobile game that can be played on either iOS or Android devices. And it's been purpose built for high school age and up audiences. And this includes audiences that are ocean lovers, animal lovers, and armchair explorers, as well as those underrepresented in ocean science. And I just want to say, if people hate the ocean or people hate the environment, that isn't the audience that we're trying to target or change their minds, but really try to engage and activate this audience that really loves nature or the ocean and really wants to contribute. And so with that, I'm going to play the trailer. Every time I see that, I get kind of goosebumps. But anyway, and when we set out to make FathomVerse, one of the things that, I, as someone who has only been working in the ocean space for, the last, well, it's actually been longer than I think. But I remember early on in my career when I transitioned from, like ocean or aeronautics types of activities, and one of the things I noticed is that messaging around the ocean and ocean exploration is really, really different than what I see in space exploration. And it wasn't until this article written by Dr. Giudica Vermani, who was at X Prize and is actually now the director of Schmidt Ocean Institute. This particular article did a really great job for me, at least, kind of highlighting the differences in how we inspire the public around our missions or our goals. And, in my mind, one of the things that we can do with this game is actually address these differences and perhaps borrow from examples that have worked, I think, really well in the public space. And so from Jodica's article, I just wanted to highlight a couple of, just really shortly some things that came from it. And I also really agree with or have resonate with me, is that the messaging tone in like space communications versus ocean communications is really positive. And, obviously that's had an impact on public perception around space activities. Also, the narrative focuses the way in which communications around space is really mission-based. So, searching for life in outer planets, getting a satellite in orbit, getting a rover on the surface of Mars, right? Those are really mission ideas that are easy for people to kind of rally around. Whereas a lot of the narrative focuses in the ocean is around ideas like, climate change, or other aspects. And what happens then when narratives are also focused on that, the messaging content also is really different. And so what Jodica pointed out is that, space content is really focused on exceptionalism, sometimes patriotism, but really like how together humans, right, individuals that are collaborating together are able to achieve something really, really special. And what we see in the ocean is really different. It can be really politicized with almost every entity posting their own agenda, right? And that is really hard for people outside of, right, the ocean science sphere or ocean communication sphere to tease apart and understand like what is important, what is the thing we should be focusing on. And then there's also community structure. So I think the space, at least outside of the community, it sounds or comes across as really unified and cross-promotional, whereas in the ocean, it's really fractured, right? There's hundreds of government, NGO, advocacy, and education organizations that are all interested in the ocean, but it doesn't come across as really unified. And then last but not least, because of all of these things together, the narrative outcomes are also really different. So space is really forward-looking, to a brighter future. And unfortunately, and I mean, I understand why it's like this, but unfortunately, this is how it also is portrayed or felt by the public, is that the outcomes tend to be more doom and gloom in the ocean. And so how do we borrow from, what I think has been pretty successful in the space area and apply it to this game that we're creating called FathomVerse. And so, can we make the tone more positive? Can we create narrative focus around missions? Can we celebrate collective human achievement and also create a unified and cross-promotional voice around these missions and approaches and be forward-looking? And so that's what we really set out to do with FathomVerse. And the design pillars that we built the game around include these 5 elements. A focus on exploration, so players have agency to select which missions to take. Being blissfully productive, so we want to, make this experience really pleasurable, while also being productive and helpful to our cause. We also want this to be really casual. We don't want people to have to invest in, our VR headset or have to set aside hours and hours of time to play a game. We want something to be really quick and short and be able to do this like while waiting at a bus stop to go home. And then also the inspiring mission, right? Again, it's related to that communications or that messaging. We really want to provide an awe-inspiring mission, which we've identified as discovering all ocean life. And last but not least, we want to keep this real. So when we started the game development, we had all these ideas for potential narratives, like, aliens coming to Earth and looking for the most abundant life on the planet to, speak with, and they had to find copepods. So we don't use a fictional premise, and really we lean into what's real. And so we make it abundantly clear to game players that they're collectively contributing to this mission of discovering all ocean life. And so I'm going to try to attempt like a really quick walkthrough to help give a sense of what this game is like. But also, when you hear me talk, also think about some other ideas you might have for it as well. We made this game so it can be extensible and change over time depending on the needs of the community. So this is the hub screen, and from here in the hub, you can see a summary of where you are, and then you can access your settings where you can adjust the music, but also there's different radio channels. And so we've been blessed to have even radio music come from the Monterey Bay Aquarium's deep sea exhibit. And so from the hub, really the goal of this game is for game players to look at images they've never seen before, or we've largely never seen before. And so you do that by going to expeditions. But in order to go to expeditions, you actually need to have training done, because you need to be certified. And in this screen, you'll see that we've got these little circles with different animals. 1 of 3 missions have been completed for sediped comb jellies. Brittle star is completed, but squids have 2 out of 3 missions. And so to be certified on a particular animal group, you need to have complete 3 dives. And so brittle star, we've completed them. And before I start training, I'm going to want to select a different animal in place of brittle star. And what happens is when I do that, I open up the animal library. And so right now we have, I think, 45 different animal missions. And the idea of a mission is that game players are then looking for these particular animal groups while they're doing a dive. And so much effort went into the content around each of these animal groups, whereby you can see what right now is a mission briefing. So it shares a diagram, explainers on the different features of these animals that distinguish them, images of animals that are part of the group, but also images of animals with an explanation that are not a part of the group and actually can be confusing. And so once you select the animals you want to be trained on, you enter a training dive. And this is an interaction that shows you, where this is your avatar and you're floating around on currents, and you're clicking your screen to send a pulse, which then opens up images of different animals. And so here, right, our 3 active missions that we're being trained on is the sediped comb jelly, the black coral, and the squid. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to find those particular animals in the images that I open up. And so there you saw me, open up an image. I'm going to inspect it by zooming in or zooming out. And because it matches my active missions, I'm going to collect it by moving that image onto my avatar. And so this process repeats itself. And in training, really, what what game players are looking at are images from FathomNet, but are images that experts have already labeled or looked at. And in this case, training is also only 25 images. And so game players have the option to, go on these currents, turn and take other currents. But really the idea is the goal is for the game player to open up all of these images, inspect them, collect the images that, might match their animal groups, so that, they can be evaluated on them. And so after you complete a dive, you're already being assigned points for, or contribution points, CP, for your effort. And then the next screen is what we call the labeling screen. So this is where you assign a name to the images that you collect. So in this case, it's a squid. And so I'm dragging that, that icon onto the image that matches what I think it is. And you'll notice on the top right, there's this heart, and I've selected it. And so what that heart does is actually add that particular image to my favorites so that I can go back and look at them later. You'll notice I misidentified something there, but when I finish the dive or finish the labeling, what you get in training is instant feedback. And so you can see right away, images where the community agrees with me, images where the community disagrees with me, but also images where I missed them, right? I didn't open up all of the animal images. And so by indicating what's been missed, we're hoping that this changes behavior so that the game player will open everything. But say I actually disagree with the community, like I really think that image is a black coral. So we have an option for you to select the image and flag it, and that flag then gets sent to an expert on our team who then reviews it. And so I've completed 3 out of 3 dives for those squids, and there's a moment of celebration that I've now been certified. And interestingly, what that means is that I've now unlocked that animal mission that I can search for them in expeditions. And so expeditions, right, are opportunities for me to have active missions of animals I've already been certified on, but also as an opportunity for game players to look at images very few people, if any people, have ever looked at before. And so besides that difference in like the image content, you could already see there's going to be more images for game players to look at. Similar to training, you've got the 3 active missions that you see it on the top. But you do also have the option to collect images for whatever reason, right? It's not just the images that might match your animal mission, but you might want to collect images to, maybe favorite them and look at them later. So here, right, my active missions are octopuses, jellyfish, and bony fish. And so you can see me discriminating between these different images. And so, once you go through that whole process and reveal all 50 images, you're assigned points. And then similar to training, here you enter the labeling screen where you need to assign, a label to each image that you collected. And so similar to training, we have the 3 active missions. We also have none of these, but then there's another one called other. And so what other actually allows you to do is label an image using any of the animal missions that you've been certified for, not just your 3 active missions. And so that's really important because that allows us and game players to more quickly go through all of this data as efficiently as possible. And so something I want to highlight, this is similar to the results you see in training, but there's an image there that I collected that was unknown to the community, right? So that means this is an image that doesn't have consensus. It's included amongst the images that few people have ever seen before. And as a game player, you're basically waiting at this point for consensus to understand how well you did on this image that almost nobody has seen before. And so the way you do that is through this My New Discoveries button, but I'll get to that later as I want to share you really quickly a different data interaction called Illuminate. And so this is a little bit different in that, the game player has full agency on where they want to go. It's very, very similar actually to deep sea exploration, right? Where we're looking for animals using just a flashlight. And in this case, you can tap the screen after you've opened the image to select it. And I just wanted to point out that, the idea here of FathomVerse is that we can create different mini games to suit different player profiles or player activity. And what that means is that this can be extensible or expandable. So as we might want different classification mini games or different types of data like localizations or adding keywords, we can do that through this mini game mechanism. And so remember, when you look at something and you don't know what it is, it's unknown, you look at that My New Discoveries button and click it when it's activated. And what you'll see is the outcome, right, of the community consensus. So as all these game players vote for a particular label on an image, we aggregate all that information and generate consensus, and you see your progress. There's also a player progression screen that allows you to evaluate, what are your contribution points. You can unlock different levels, but you can also unlock different content. And so the way you can view that content is in the vault. And here is a collection, right, of these different awards that we've created that are exclusive to the game. And that can include videos or images, etc. You can also look for your favorites from the hub. And this allows you to go back and look at, the animals that you, identified with, but also provides a moment for you to share those images. Then you also have access to the library from the hub at all times. And then last but not least, we also have a community button that will take you to our Discord server, which now has more than 600 different members. So all of these things together make up FathomVerse. There's a lot going on, and I'm just really excited to answer if you have any specific questions about it. I do want to add that, we're also thinking a lot about how do we engage an educator audience. So one of the things that, educators, but also game players have asked for is understanding what their contribution is to the game. And so what we're creating, we haven't launched it officially yet, is what we're calling a player contribution report, where you can enter in your player ID, which you can find on your settings page in the app, and generate a report that shows, what level you've reached, what score or how much CP have you generated, kind of your annotation activity over time. On the pie chart on the right shows your discoveries, which ones are awaiting consensus, which ones are right or wrong. And then I think what's really exciting too is we can also share with game players or educators how well people are conducting these missions. And so on the far right, what you're seeing is a score. One is like 100%. And you can see, areas of that could use more help or more focus, and areas where you might be excelling. And so this contribution report will hopefully be made available very soon on the FathomVerse website. And so I just really want to highlight a couple of outcomes since we've launched the game. We launched it on May 1st, 2024. Since then, we have almost 12,000 users. These users come from 130 different countries, something I'm really, really excited about. And the game players together have already generated more than 5 million annotations. 20,000 images have reached consensus. And I want to add that there's millions of images that are in our pipeline that come from our research partners, not only MBARI, but Schmidt Ocean Institute, NOAA's Office of Exploration and Research, ONC, Ocean Networks Canada, the Ocean Observing Initiative with NSF, OET, and of course MBARI. So the idea, right, is with all these different approaches or these different platforms, we don't have a lot of experts in the world, but we have lots and lots of enthusiasts. Together, we can, help contribute to this human verification problem and accelerate this data pipeline. And so, really the goal here is to be able to, generate models, share data that can be, applied generally. And so someday, right, we'll be able to do, observations or deployment of our platforms to collect this visual data and be able to instantly get insight into what's in it and inform decision making around our activities. And so, while I just talked about FathomNet and FathomVerse, I also want to talk about how we're using things like the data in FathomNet. I should add that FathomVerse data coming from game players is actually being pushed to FathomNet. And so the idea here is that once those data are in FathomNet, we can use FathomNet data to train models and repeat that process over again. And the idea here is once we have this data in FathomNet, we can use these models in really creative ways that have accelerated our activities to try and move, biological observations from these really expensive, difficult to operate remote vehicles to autonomous systems, right, that allow us to scale up our capacity. And so one of the ways we're also doing that here in the Bioinspiration Lab is developing imaging systems that can be integrated onto autonomous underwater vehicles. So this is the 7-camera imaging system called Chiton. And with NOAA funding, we're going to be modifying this to do something I think that's really exciting. So already with Chiton, we're able to do onboard detection of animals to generate these ROIs, or regions of interest, that you see here. And already just the data that we've collected so far, you can see pretty clearly how like the biological composition of the community changes with respect to what depth you're at. And so we are really excited to be able to integrate these models on these embedded systems to do IDs of animals on the fly, and then getting those insights more quickly. The other thing that we've done is integrate these models onto our vehicles, in this case, a remotely operated vehicle, to help with longer term observations of animals. And so what you see here, blue, is the science camera zoomed way in on a giant larvation. And the red feeds that you see are from a stereo pair. And we're running a neural network on that imagery, the stereo pair, to indicate where a target class or target animal is. And you'll notice, if you've done a lot of ROV operations, if you're trying to look at something in midwater, you're constantly adjusting, or a pilot is constantly maneuvering the vehicle to keep the animal in place. And in this case, we have almost perfect distance, like held very, very robustly, and don't have to make any changes or require the pilot to do any movement. And we've actually demonstrated that these kinds of algorithms, when integrated onto vehicles, can really enable long duration observations. And so in this case, we've, in a paper we published in 2021, we were able to, without loss of control due to this algorithm, track and observe an animal, particularly a siphonophore, for over 5 hours. I think that might be a world record, but I could be wrong. And then more recently, we're thinking a lot about how do we enable kind of like autonomous exploration for new life. And so one of the things we've done is integrate these models and change the vehicle controller so that we can switch to different missions based on the imaging information that we get. And so on the top left, you're going to see what mode we're in. So green shows search. And what we're doing here is it's a demonstration of where we're trying to look for a giant larvation. So that's our target class. And what we want to see is the vehicle behavior change as a function or as a result of what it's seeing in this visual data. Are we going to get it? And so you'll notice as we get closer, we are acquiring our target because it's matching the class that we're supposedly looking for. And once we get close enough, that is then confirmed, and the vehicle mode is transitioned to track. And so it's these approaches that I'm really excited about that will allow us to move these really costly, time-intensive observations from these remotely operated vehicles to autonomous systems. And the goal, right, again, is if we're able to do all of these things together, we will be able to one day inform deep sea bio-inspired design. And so with that, I am happy to take any questions you might have.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kakani. This is awesome. We're going to move into our question and answer section now. And I see we've got at least one question in there. So I'm going to put Kakani back on the screen and approve that question and put it up on the screen. So here's our first question. Have you noticed if people choose certain categories more than others? If so, how do you get less reviewed categories looked at?
That is a really good question. And if I tell you that the game is so heavily instrumented, like I can actually pull up an analytics report right now and tell you what is the most popular mission that people are playing. Um, I can do that. So right now, the most popular mission that people are playing is bony fish. Number 2 is octopuses. Number 3 is jellies. Number 4 is sea stars. And number 5, interestingly, are Physonex siphonophores. And so, that we can track all that information so we know what missions are more popular. But what we're doing within the Discord is we're providing updates that include, sharing with game players every week what the status of like the process is. So, we're constantly refreshing data or moving data into the game. And so every week we provide a report that says, there's X number of images that need your attention in each of these different animal groups. And it would be great if you could focus your effort on, either sea fans or sponges. And when we actually do that prompt in the Discord, we do see a change or a shift in player behavior in the game analytics. But to be fair, not everybody uses Discord, and so something that we're looking at for the next version of the game, which we hope to launch in March, would be like an in-app notification with that weekly report, so people can understand what needs their help or their focus.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I'm not seeing another pending question, but I have a question of my own. For this app, is there age limit on downloading it or using it? Is there any kind of those type of restrictions or requirements?
Yeah, there are no restrictions. It's a free app; anyone can download it. But it's good to point out that we definitely designed the game for high school age and up audiences. That was a decision that we made. But there's no reason why an interested or precocious, let's say, a middle schooler wouldn't want to play the game, and they can. And so, yeah, share it with all your friends with kids, without.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mhm.
I'm seeing another question. So let me put that on the screen. As the app grows, do you plan to use it as an avenue to garner more interest in oceanography / change the perspective on ocean sciences?
That is a hope. That is a goal. It's always hard to say that you're going to do this or whatever at the beginning of a project, but that is really what we built FathomVerse for. And so when game players are playing the game, they're generating these contribution points. They're able to then unlock different awards thanks to their contribution. And so those awards can be whatever we want. So right now they're video awards that show either more visual data or more imagery of animals in the ocean. They're also deep dives where we explain how the game works and how their contribution is helping with FathomVerse. And what we hope over time as we build more and more partnerships is that it can also be a vehicle for people to share, their projects or their programs or activities in the game, either as an award or some other mechanism. And so, we can add and change awards as we go. And so, that could be, a video that NOAA releases that's perhaps specific to FathomVerse. It could be an aquarium wanting to share some update on something with the FathomVerse game players. It could also be like a live stream, right? An ROV live stream, inviting people to come and watch what's happening on an Okeanos Explorer dive, right? So there's all of these things that we could potentially be doing with the game, and I'm really excited for the opportunity to see if this will work.
Awesome. I think that leads very nicely into the next question. Are there plans to implement community aspects to the game, like you can connect with friends and compete with them?
This is another great question and something that we've talked a lot about within our team. And so one of our challenges is budget, right? And so one of the things we have this like aspiration for these more like community plugins, but we don't currently have the budget for it. And so the way in which we try to at least set up a space for community that can engage FathomVerse players is the Discord server. And so all of those activities, like connecting with your friends, competing with them in terms of like looking at where you are on the leaderboard, all of that is being conducted in the Discord. And while I don't think we'll be able to do this for version 2 of the game, which will be launched in March, hopefully, this is something we can definitely incorporate if we have the funding in future versions of the game.
Thanks, Connie. And you may have mentioned this earlier, but my question is, can you pick a specific area in the ocean? Say you were on the West Coast and you wanted to focus on the Pacific Ocean as your area. Is that an option?
I want it to. We're not quite there yet. So right now, game players have the option to either do training or an expedition. They have options to select different types of mini games where they can interact with this data differently. But right now we don't have that granularity where game players can also select the particular region they might want to go on, or like the particular platform or expedition that they want to go on. But we have a lot of ideas for how we would like to do that in the future. Maybe it'll make it in version 2. I don't know yet.
No, that's very, very exciting. I'm going to give folks another like 30 seconds to see if we have any lingering questions. And I'll give a shout out to our introducer, Megan Cromwell, to see if she has any questions.
I hope you all downloaded it.
Yep, I'm going to do that the minute I'm done here. So, Megan, did you have any questions?
I had a question that actually came to me through a G chat, and that is, Kakani, would you be willing to present on the OBAI portal at some point also?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I appreciate that opportunity actually. And we're also going to be hosting a workshop where the leads of that development, Ben Woodward and Susan Poulton, will be providing all the details as well. And I think that's scheduled for, I want to say September 18th. But yeah, happy to share.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Connie. I see that someone put in the chat that there are some download links at fathomverse.game.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to follow that link. Again, Dr. Kinkani, for giving this presentation. It's been wonderful. And thank you, everyone, so much for attending today.
Thank you.